Hi, hello. Welcome to LearnStroke IAS classes by Arjun. You're listening to the daily Hindu news analysis from Civil Services Perspective with Arjun R Shankar. Today, the date is 30th November 2022, and let's find out the important news leads explanation from UPSC Perspective. Let's go to the first question. The area important being the doubling court strength won't end pendency, says Supreme Court of India. So this article very important from GS paper, polity governance perspective. You need to know what do you mean by a pendency of cases. You know that a lot of cases are pending with the courts. So one of the important reasons, one of the petitions that the Supreme Court said that you need to double the number of judges in the high courts and the district judiciary to solve the pendency of the cases. So, the Supreme Court has said that increasing the number of judges will not demolish the perennial problem of pendency. And the judge population ratio, what a judge population ratio in developed countries was 50 for every 1 million. And according, at least 10 crores cases are pending in the district judiciary alone. 10 crores of cases are pending. So the question is increasing the number of judges will solve the pendency of cases, the pending cases. So justice is getting delayed. So a main question from here, the perennial pendency of cases in the court is justice delayed. Discuss and suggest the way forward can be a main question for your GS paper 2. So read more about the pendency of cases. Why do you think the cases are pending with the courts, the lower courts, etc. Moving on to the next important news item. Here we go. Betting for exotic meat, gambling dens in Manipur descend further into illegality. So one thing is something you have to notice: animals are being poached, being killed for gambling, which is an illegal thing. And this time it talks for Manipur. And from very important from the concept of GS paper 3, environment biodiversity. So what does this article talks about? What do you mean by raffle draw? And basically, raffle draw is a gambling competition in which people obtain number tickets. I mean, each of the tickets has the chance of winning a prize. At the time, the winners are drawn at a random from a container holding a copy of each number. So it's a raffle draw where people are gambling with animals. And apart from this, this is a very important thing to know that wild boars, deers, animals, and what do you mean by bint wrong? It's an arboreal mammal, also known as bear cat. Squirrels, flying fox, bats, and different types of birds, such as gray-sided thrush, tragopans, often called horned peasants, are all from Manipur, are being killed for online gambling with this. So, one thing that we have to know: such questions are very important because, for prelims perspective, they may ask you, what is a bin to wrong or bear cat? What do you mean by arboreal? So arboreal are uh, creatures which only lives on trees. That means arboreal means they live on trees. And when you talk about the binturong, it's the only mammal from Africa, Asia, and Europe, and one of the only two carnivore with a prehensile tail. So there are many important aspects about every animals, but for prelims, match the following, and which of the following is a bird. You need to know gray-sided thrush, tragop, and such questions are very important from the prelims perspective. So know more about binturong or bear cat. Moving on, Kerala registers an MMR of 19, experts disputed. So, what is this MMR basic concept concerning about? What is MMR? MMR simply means maternal mortality ratio. What do you mean by maternal mortality ratio? And in this, it is said that maternal mortality rates basically refers to the deaths due to the complication from pregnancy or childbirth. And from internationally, when you look at probably from 2000 to 2017, the global maternity ratio declined from 38%. That means almost 342 deaths to 200 level 11 deaths to almost 1 lakh live births. So the global average was around 342, 211 for every 1 lakh live births. So maternal mortality ratio is defined as the number of maternal deaths during a given period of time per 1 lakh live births during the same time period. So number of maternal deaths during the time period of how many deaths has happened in 1 lakh live population. And this also brings us to an important concept called LMD. What do you mean by LMD? Means late maternal death. So late maternal death is defined as the death of a woman from direct or indirect obstetric causes more than 42 days but less than 1 year after termination of pregnancy. So this is very important, and it says that Kerala has registered an incredible maternal mortality ratio of 19, only 19 out of 1 lakh live births. So some have disputed this number, but definitely this can be a very good achievement for Kerala. Moving on to the next important one is what's wrong in Jallikattu as Supreme Court. So basically, you need to know what is the history of Jallikat. GS paper one, history and culture, and from a GS paper two, polity and governance. You need to know the Supreme Court has said what is wrong in Jallikattu because it protects animals from unnecessary pain and it is preserving the culture and traditions of the people of the state. So, what is the constitutional right you want to protect here? So, what is the constitutional right you want to protect here? So, what is Jallikattu? You need to know something about the history also. So, moving on to the next important one is editorial. More vaccine choices. So, this is from GS paper to health perspective. This is very important. And this is nothing but the development of an intranasal vaccine against COVID 19. So, recently, yesterday's news, we discussed that there is an intranasal vaccine coming, which is a very good initiative. So, in this, we need to understand few important points. Basically, what is a nasal vaccine? And what do you mean by a homologous and heterologous booster vaccine? And what are the benefits of nasal vaccine? So, you need to know that in the nasal vaccine, the vaccine dose is given via the nose rather than orally or through the arm. As the target is to deliver a dose which goes right into the respiratory pathway, the vaccine is either injected through a specific nasal spray or through aerosol delivery. So that basically it happens through the nasal path. And the Bharat Biotech's intranasal COVID-19 vaccine was granted emergency approval for primary vaccination. So, unlike the Covaxin, which is an inactivated vaccine, the intranasal vaccine uses a viral vector platform that utilizes a recombinant adenovirus as a vector. So, that is very important. It is very different from Covaxin. So, in this, you need to understand what do you mean by homologous and heterologous vaccine. So, homologous boosting means a person is injected with the same vaccine that was used for the previous two doses. But in heterologous boosting, a person is injected with a different vaccine from that was used for the primary dose. They use a different one. And people say that intranasal vaccines they can be potentially they can prevent the SARS-CoV-2 infection, and it's very important. You need to know all these concepts regarding this. Moving on to the next is oil no bar, an important editorial. This is nothing but it talks about the US sanction on Venezuela. So you need to know what you mean by a sanction, because the Biden administration decision to ease the sanction on Venezuela is actually a good thing, because the South American country has the world's largest oil reserve, Venezuela. So from a geography perspective, you need to find out where is Venezuela located and in the map, and what is the American Venezuelan problem, and the sanction is getting replaced. What do you mean by a sanction? Very important. Moving on to the major editorial of the day is settling the language for cooperative federalism. This brings us a lot of question regarding what do you mean by cooperative federalism? What do you mean by federalism? And what is Article 343 to 351? Article 343 is the official language of the Union, and Article 351 is the Directive for Development of Hindi Language. So this basically discusses a lot of things about imposing Hindi as a national language and imposing Hindi to various states. So federalism basically is a system where the system of government where the powers have been divided between the center and the states or provinces. And the cooperative federalism in India is an ideology, a relationship between center and the other states or provinces, and to come together, to govern, to cooperate, to resolve common social, political, and economic other problems, to cooperate between center and state and solve the problems together is cooperative federalism. You need to know from GS paper 2 polity governance perspective. And you need to know that 343 is the language, 351 is the official development of Hindi language, and 345 article leaves the state to choose its own language for official purpose. In actual practice, several states and union territories continue to use English, but in 348, it states that all the Article 348 it states that all the proceedings of the Supreme Court on every High Court and bills shall be in English language. So this also brings us what is the eighth schedule of the Constitution of India, and what is the eighth schedule? And the eighth schedule is nothing but the official languages of the Republic of India. And important thing is English is not one of them. At the time of the writing constitution, there were only 14 languages mentioned in the eighth schedule. So that's a very important article from polity governance. So this can be another mains question. Language is an essential ingredient of identity. Examine in the recent line of incidents. So language is an essential ingredient of identity. So from a polity governance, you have to mention all the articles and debates followed by that. Next is there is another article which I have not mentioned. The spy master, the new chief of army staff of Pakistan, has been elected. So not very important. There are some important aspect, but not very important from the exam perspective. Next is EWS are well represented in higher education. So this brings us the question: what is an EWS community? What do you mean by EWS? What is the Constitution 124th Amendment Bill? And what is NIRF or National Institutional Ranking Framework? And what is the Ajay Bhushan Pandey Committee? So, the heated debate is the Supreme Court judgment upholding the 10% quota for economically weaker section EWS is now settled. And the EWS is a section of the society in India that belongs to unreserved category and has an annual family income of less than 8 lakh rupees. So, this category includes people who do not belong to ST, SC, or OBC. So the 124th Amendment Bill is basically providing the advancement of EWS concept. And the NIRF is nothing but it's a methodology adopted by the Ministry of Education, approved by the Ministry of Human Resource Development, and it's basically to rank the institution of higher education in India. And the Ajay Bhushan Pandey Committee is exactly related to the EWS, and the former Finance Secretary Ajay Bhushan Pandey will head the review of the EWS committee. So read more about this to understand EWS, etc. Moving on to the next is where does waste originate and go? Very important from GS paper 3, environment, biodiversity, and environmental protection. There is something called as a new report which is called as the NV Stats India 2022. So NV Stats India is published by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, and it has basically highlighted the issue of waste management. So the key question come how to tackle and dispose waste, and how to dispose e-waste, also very important from the uh, environmental perspective. It is known that e-waste is disposed, there is no treatment and disposable facility. It's very difficult, but still there are many other various things to do. Moving on to the national important headlines. The election commission to hear Shiva Sena dispute over name, symbol, and December 12. So this brings us what this is basically what is the election symbols reservation and allotment order 1968. So basically, the Shiva Sena, both Shinde and Thackeray factions have claimed recognized they both Shinde and Thackeray factions call themselves as a real Shiva Sena, and this whole dispute is regarding the bow and arrow symbol of the Shiva Sena. So election commission is actually getting the complaint, and you know that the election commission has a bank of over 200 such symbols which it allocates to recognized and unrecognized parties. And if the parties have the same choice for a symbol, the EC follows, election commission follows a first come first serve policy also. So this is very important regarding elections and symbols. Two lawyers become additional judges of Bombay High Court, and this is nothing but the very important topic because recently Supreme Court expressed its disapproval about the delay in the union government by appointing judges in the Supreme Court collegium. As per the Supreme Court collegium, so the Supreme Court has criticized the government for holding up the collegium recommendation. They have, you know, keeping on hold the collegium recommendation for a long time. So they have Supreme Court has criticized. Next is India grew as a regional power in the Indo-Pacific region. So GS paper to international relations, you need to know I'll give you an important question here, mains question. India has emerged as a regional power and a net security provider in the Indo-Pacific. Comment. So this has to be commented with the humanitarian assistance and the disaster relief to its citizens and regional partners. So in this regard, what do you mean by HADR? Humanitarian assistance and disaster relief exercise, Summonway 2022, which is happening in Agra. So read it from GS paper to international relations perspective. Moving on, the most important headline, perhaps the most breaking one: AIMS services remained disruptive for seventh straight day amid alleged ransomware attack on its server. The AIMS, so you need to know the AIMS has been hacked. What do you mean by ransomware attack? What do you mean by ransomware attack? Very important from GS paper 3 science and technology perspective. And from a policing perspective, what is intelligence fusion and strategic operation called IFSO, run by the unit, it's a unit of Delhi police which has a special cyber cell. So read it from the perspective of cyber crime, cyber warfare. What is IFSO and what do you mean by ransomware? Very important, you need to understand that. Next is extremism, terrorism are against the meaning of Islam, says National Security Advisor. So very important from the perspective of GS paper 3 internal security. And Ajit Doval has said extremism and terrorism are against the meaning of Islam because Islam means peace and well-being. So it's a good article. You have to just know about this. So next is BSF or all women patrol team shoots down a Pakistan drone, seizes 3 kilo of narcotics. So GS paper 3 internal security. And sorry, you can discuss as security features between border issue. uh, this happens every time when Indian BSF women patrol team shot down a narcotic team. So this is very important in border management. Next is Telangana gets recovery notice for taking up works not allowed under NREGA or Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. So this is basically very simple. The Union Ministry has asked the state government to return around 151.9 crores spent on the construction of platform for drying fish grain in the name of food grain storage. Because around there are certain work which is called as a 265 permitted works that can be done under the MG NREGA. But what happened is there are more than 22,600 such platforms and works which are done outside the permit of NREGA, which is illegal. So the Ministry of Rural Development has asked the state government to return back 150 crores. So this is very important from GS paper 2, government schemes and the working of the government schemes. Next is Niti Aayog proposes decarbonization of industrial emissions, and that brings us an important concept. What do you mean by carbon capture, utilization, and storage, or CCUS? So, CCUS is the process of capturing carbon dioxide emissions, either using them to make things such as building materials or permanently storing them thousands of feet below the surface, that is the storage. So this is what is called as the carbon capture utilization. It's a process of capturing carbon dioxide and make things such as building materials, that is the utilization, and permanently store them below the surface, it's storage. And the carbon capture utilization is the technology of decarbonizing emission from high polluting sectors such as steel, cement, oil, gas, petrochemicals, chemical fertilizers, etc. This is a very important role to have cut down the carbon dioxide emissions by 2050. So CCUS technology is helping the low carbon hydrogen economy in the removal of CO2. So there is another question. Mains question. Carbon capture utilization and storage has an important role to play in enabling sunrise sectors such as coal gasification and hydrogen economy. Discuss. And the CCUS has a very important role to play in the net zero emission target of India by 2070. And it's very importantly know about this concept from GS paper 3 economy, sorry, environment protection. Next is UNDP to help waste segregation workers get government schemes. So this is very important in this regard because the UNDP, know what is UNDP, United Nations Development Program. As a part of the initiative, the the United Nations Under Secretary General will distribute Gendan accounts to waste segregation workers. And this is also a mechanism to improve them from the informal to the formal sector. So they are moved to the informal to the formal sector. A very important article regarding GS paper 2 schemes. India and Bangladesh establish contact as more Kukichin refugees are expected to enter Mizoram. GS paper 2 international relations, refugee management. So in this you need to know who are the Kukichin refugees, and the most important thing, United Nations Refugee Convention of 1951 and its 1967 protocol. So you need to know that more than 150 people, the Kukichin refugees, are going to come in Mizoram, and India is not a signatory. India is not a signatory to United Nations Refugee Convention and 1967 protocol, and does not recognize refugees, undocumented migrants. So if they are coming, they are liable to be prosecuted for violating the Foreigners Act. India is not a signatory of this. And the 1951 Refugee Convention and 1967 Protocol are the legal documents that almost define the obligations and define the term refugee. The core principle is non refoulement, which means a refugee should not be returned to a country where they face a serious threat to their life and freedom. So India is not the core principle of 19, the Refugee Convention is non refoulements. In India is not a signatory. That's a problem. So you should know what is happening. The members, the community members of the Chittagong Hill Tract area in Bangladesh fled the country after the Rapid Action Battalion (RAB) began a crackdown on Kukichin fighters. So this is why people are migrating. Next, moving on to the international news, Japan Prime Minister wants defense budget to reach 2% of GDP by 2027. So they want the defense budget is 2% of the GDP is used for defense purpose. So you need to know what are the other countries, India's defense budget as per the GDP. It's very important. Next is Singapore lifts gay sex ban, blocks marital equality for LGBTQ people. And that is a good thing. Singapore has decriminalized homosexuality. And next is ONGC oil gas price to be capped at $6.5 million for 5 years. That means it's capped at $6.5. It's capped at $6.5, and per ceiling against the current rate of $8.57. So a committee important regarding this is the Kirit Parikh committee or Kirit Parikh panel regarding the oil gas. Very important GS paper 3 economy perspective. And the retail pilot of digital rupee is going to start from December 1. Let's see how the digital currency is coming in. So what do you mean by digital rupee? GS paper 3 economy, it's an important area. And the important one, NK Singh bats for universal health cover. In this, the 15th Finance Commission chairperson NK Singh called for a substantial increase in the budgetary allocations for health sector to restructure the central schemes to have a better health facilities. And the 15th Finance Commission has also mooted an idea of including health in the concurrent list. You know that presently the health is actually under the state list. So very important, read this article from that perspective. And also the finance commission is also suggesting that uh, universalizing health insurance to the missing middle people. That means health insurance for the middle people, people who are not rich to buy private health care, but nor poor to qualify for the government scheme. There is a middle people. So the finance commission is also calling for a universalization health insurance for middle people who are neither rich neither poor. Very important from GS paper to health. And the sanctions hit Russia, set to ask India for parts for cars and aircraft. So this is GS paper to international relations. Curiously, Moscow has sent India a list of more than 500 products, including parts of cars, aircraft, trains, uh, as sanctions is squeezing Russia's ability to run vital industries. They are facing shortage of parts, and it has asked Russia's friend India to supply more than 500 potential materials for Russia. So this is the most important news leads of the day with mains question and things and areas to study. Keep listening to LearnStroke IAS classes by